If you had the opportunity to live in a children's wonderland, would you choose anywhere else? We don't just say, we do. It's the Stain City way.
Hello and welcome to Real Talk on SABC3. The stage is yours. Today is indeed a heavy day for South Africa as a whole, as we mourn the death of Stimela frontman Ray Phiri. Since the early 80s, Phiri, as the lead vocalist of the band Stimela, has created many great memories for lovers of music through his hits such as Where Did We Go Wrong, Whispers in the Deep, and Zagalanganeno, Come to Me. We at Real Talk, as well as SABC3, thank Ray Phiri for the music, and may he rest in peace. Today, we're also getting into some of the biggest atrocities threatening children's rights and their well-being. Child abuse. We cannot talk about this enough. In 2015, UCT released the Optimus study on child abuse, violence and neglect in South Africa. 1 in 5 children have reported being sexually abused. That's reported, right? Those are the ones that we know about. More than a third of children have been hit, beaten or kicked, and 21.3% of respondents experience neglect by an adult caregiver in their lives. To help us unpack this further, I'm joined by the director of the Teddy Bear Foundation, Shaida Omar, as well as the Chief of Child Protection and Social Policy for UNICEF, Micah Hybrechts. Ladies, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time. I said off air that you guys look like you planned your outfits. You know what I'm saying? I wish I'd also had like an orange ensemble on me, but alas, we'll just carry on. Micah, let me start with you. When it comes to child abuse, right, what is the scope? We know about emotional abuse, we know about physical abuse, but what other abuses are we neglecting to accept that are there?
So you just mentioned the statistics already related to child abuse in South Africa. What else is happening in South Africa is still that many children are being abandoned and neglected. So the right to be loved, cared for and protected is being ignored for many of the children. Secondly, a decent standard of living. Yeah. 2/3 of children still live under the upper bound poverty line. And 1 out of 5 children go hungry to bed at night. Yeah. The last one is children's voices are not heard. Their needs are not looked into carefully. So their right to participation needs to be embraced much better, so that all of us better take care of children and create a protective environment.
But Shaida, listening to what Micah is saying, is it not difficult to enforce that, you know, in South Africa, for instance, the right for children to be heard, because you understand the culture of South Africa is that children should be seen and not heard. I mean, at least I know that's how I grew up. It was like, start speaking, you back chatting, keep quiet. Now, I know there's a fine line between that, but, you know, it's difficult to enforce that with the culture that we grew up in.
And I think you are absolutely correct, because the way we've been socialized and across cultures, it's not just a specific culture, across cultures where children have been instilled with, you know, with the authority, where they've been told they have to respect their elders. And I think I want to highlight one important thing, how this culture has impacted negatively on children. 2 years ago, there was a serial rapist that was instrumental in raping 76 victims. These were all children under the age of 18 across the province. And I'm sure you will recall that the night before he was to testify, he committed suicide. Yes. In jail. Yeah. What stands out for me, we conducted those assessments on all the young victims, and what emerged strongly from that was the victims went along with the stranger simply because he was an elder. It was something that they respect their elders. They are expected to show that kind of deference to somebody older. He lured them by asking simple things like, direct me, I'm looking for some medication, muti, in some direction. And along each time the modus operandi was the same. And the question that was asked by the police was, why did they go along? Meaning that they cooperated. They cooperated for different reasons. And that is why I'm saying that culturally we need to revisit and review how we are raising our children, enabling them and empowering them to stand up and say, no, I don't feel comfortable, I'm not going with you. I'm not, even if you might, because I think culturally children will say malume to anybody out there, you know.
And that's how we taught.
That's right.
We taught that your mom's friend, it doesn't have to be a blood relation. Your mom's friend is either auntie or umalume, and there is an automatic respect that happens then, an automatic, you know, kind of like subservient manner that you must go in. Micah, I like the fact that you're also coming through with the stats. Here's the thing: South Africa's got a very high percentage of unemployed people, right? Therefore, children fall under that. So when you speak of, you know, the right to food, the right to sleep with a full stomach and neglect, surely then the child abuse is a result of that. But if we're curing what started it, is we're going to our unemployment. How does UNICEF come in and play a role with, you know, when something like unemployment could be the cause of child abuse?
Well, UNICEF is here to protect children's rights, so we cannot deal with employment creation at the macroeconomic level.
But
however,
do you work with government?
We work with government, and personally I work as a senior advisor to the Ministry of Social Development Justice on a regular basis. And what is very important, to start from an early age with the children themselves to ensure that they have access to early childhood care and development, proper education, and that you instill in the youth the life skills and the knowledge for and create opportunities for internship, apprenticeships, and further growth. So it's a combination of looking at social development, economic development, and address the root causes that lead to poverty and inequality. And at the same time, look at the macroeconomic reform that has to take place in order to further create employment opportunities.
Shaida, do you find that you find the difficulty in, you know, trying to take the child out of an abusive situation when it comes to the fact that the parents just simply don't have the money to be looking after them? So I understand that at first you would like to keep the child with the parent, right? But sometimes it's just not possible. Do you find those situations?
Indeed, I think it's a very challenging situation. Of course, the Children's Act looks at the preservation of the family, and we look at what is in the best interest of the child. But again, you've highlighted that sometimes children have to be removed, but it's got to be contextualized and understood within this family context, because sometimes it's not purposeful neglect. It's situational neglect, as my dear colleagues so clearly articulated, that it's not out of choice that children are sometimes neglected where they do not have access to education, to healthcare facilities. It's the circumstances of the family. But I think this is a systemic problem. It's a systemic issue which needs to be addressed on all levels. That yes, we work with individual children, and often the decision, you know, that I think is very difficult to make, to say, to remove the child, because what implications or long-term effects is it going to have on the child? Because the child will often feel that it's my fault. That's why I've been removed from my family. It's seen as a punitive measure, a punishment by removing that child, and therefore a more holistic and integrated approach is required, not only by civil society. Yes, civil society is doing the work, NGOs like ourselves and many other organizations, but we need government departments as well to intervene. And it's not just one government department like social development.
It's across the board.
Across,
of course.
Education, housing, labor, health. Everybody has a role and a responsibility to fulfill. And if we want to make a difference, we need to work together to make that difference.
This is exactly why I was raising with you that, like, surely the government has to come in play, because there's so many departments that this falls under. We are going to discuss this at length when we come back, because this, of course, is a very important issue of child abuse. Come back to us right here on SABC 3. Welcome back to Real Talk on SABC3. The stage is yours. It is the vision of the Teddy Bear Foundation that children will not be abused any longer. They work tirelessly on a daily basis to provide the necessary services that help abused children heal. Another organization dedicated to protecting the rights of children is the global group UNICEF. We're discussing child abuse today with Shaida Omar from the Teddy Bear Foundation, as well as Micah Huybrechts on behalf of UNICEF. Let's talk about, because I wanted to mention this earlier and then I lost it and then it came back now. On the road, you see a beggar, they're using a child, right? Is that not child abuse, Shaida?
Again, I think one needs to explore the context. Is it in the best interest of the child? Certainly not, because extensive studies have been conducted where a lot of these children don't even belong to those so-called beggars that are out there begging. They hire those children, so they incentivize this opportunity to other needy parents. And again, when I say it's a systemic issue, this, why are parents allowing their children to be solicited in that fashion? Simply because of their unmet needs. Because if you look at the hierarchy of needs, their basic needs, food and shelter, are a challenge. Desperation, desperate times, or calls for drastic measures. And I mean, one needs to explore, unpack and address those challenges, because the moment child welfare or a child protection officer goes to the street, removes that individual with the child, a week later they're going to resurface, maybe find another child.
I see Micah's nodding. Can you come in for that? Because that's the thing now. And this is what we're discussing earlier about the government and policies that need to be changed, because here's the thing, you guys go solve a problem here, you cut it off and then it just sprouts somewhere else. How do you fight that?
There is an urgent need for government ministries to intensify their investment in the prevention and early intervention of children at risk. There are many good programs, such as Isibindi, which is a program named Courage in Zulu, and that provides at-risk children the love and support with child and youth care workers who provide home visits, psychosocial support, parenting advice. These children are linked to the grants, and then they have access to the safe park, so there is need to accelerate the investment in an integrated package of services.
But what's the process? Children. If you're driving home now and you see a woman with a child at midnight, it's raining and they're begging, obviously you can't stop and be like, give me your child. No. You know, there's a process around that. What's the process? So
in that situation, the social welfare needs to be informed, but at that time they are closed. So it is important to inform the police so that the child obtains shelter for the night, and the next day that social welfare becomes involved in assessing the well-being of that child and the family and see what care and referral plan needs to be made. Either for the child to be taken away from that family, which is not preferable, but to make sure that the household has enough economic and protective base that the child doesn't need to appear on the street every day, which would see collaboration between police, social welfare and also medical services.
All right. Shaida, there's another dynamic that I read up on, is when the abusers, the perpetrators of children are other children.
Indeed, I think if we look at where do children learn their behavior from, children are a microcosm of the broader society. They learn by what they observe, and children are surrounded. If we just look at the whole landscape of South Africa, they're surrounded by neighborhood violence, domestic violence, this broad culture of violence around them. And just looking at the influence, external factors, the risk factors like media, the way they sensationalize, eroticize the grandiosity that is attached to violence, to sex, that children start associating power with maladaptive behaviors. And more than 40% of sexual assaults are committed by children against other children. And that is a known fact. We are finding this to be a reality on a daily basis, where children as young as 5 and 6 years old have been instrumental in penetration and attempted penetration. A child does not have these things inherent in their makeup. It's observational theory. It's learning by what you live. It's a learned social response.
I just feel like the goalposts for you guys and your organizations are always changing because, you know, it's like child abuse. Then you think like it's a big, ugly man, you know, who is molesting a child. Meanwhile, you tell us 40% of the crimes in child abuse are crimes that are done by children against children. And then the dynamic of the cell phone comes out, the fact that children are recording each other doing pornographic acts, which once again, I'm sure falls under child abuse, right? I mean, are we winning this battle, Micah? Are we winning? Oh, you're not, your face.
No, you know, I am very much an optimist, but it is in South Africa there's very great need to build social coherence and connectedness through music, religion, sports, bring people together, continue with the healing and instill a sense of love and dignity in children themselves, but adults that have to take better care of them. Fathers need to become involved in childcare. Parents have to take their responsibility of parenting seriously and be helped with parenting advice. But we have to all create circles of care that allow us to create a more protective environment, because the levels of South Africa is 1 out of 3. As you have said, that's 7 times more than an average of violence against children in the world. So it is a scourge. At this moment, there's a femicide going on. Every 20 minutes, a woman gets raped. So we really need to urgently come together and look at our love, dignity for oneself, start with the emotional healing and create dialogue in the family and in the community.
Are we doing that in schools, Shaida? Are we starting the dialogue? Because I feel like looking at, because that's another government thing, education, right? Looking at schools, I think we should go to maths, history, biology, and dialogue amongst each other. We need to start having these conversations.
I love what you're saying, because when people ask me, so what is the way forward? I say dialogue, dialogue, dialogue. Communicating with children is critical. It should be a fundamental principle that should be rolled out across the whole educational sector, starting with your ECD facilities, early childhood development centers. The moment that a child develops vocabulary, we need to start engaging with them. But you're asking a very pertinent and critical question. Are we doing that? It's happening, but it's not happening sufficiently, consistently, and across the board. I think that is our fight with the Department of Education, you know, this call to action, because it's a matter of national urgency.
It is.
We have developed a protocol, an educators protocol, enabling and empowering educators on identifying abuse, the management thereof, because often there's mismanagement, secondary victimization, and legislation pertaining to that, because often educators don't know where to refer, how to address the situation.
And then when they get there, there's a backlog, and then they're being pushed from pillar to post.
And schools are supposed to be a place for safety and education. Unfortunately, the reality is that is where they are being violated. Violated by other learners, by educators themselves. So school has actually become a dangerous place, no longer a safe place. And this is why we need to call the Department of Education to book. They need, you know what they say, kinako, it's time now.
All right, Micah, thank you so much for your time. I know you were saying thank me for having you here, but honestly, thank you for being here. And also, it must be difficult sometimes for you because you're not South African, and then people will be like, yeah, when I leave our country alone. But the fact that you stick at it with UNICEF and you still do the job means a whole lot to us. So thank you. And in course, I would say, please don't ever get tired. Micah's leaving us. Shaida, you're going to join us later. After the break, we'll meet a young woman who does her part to create awareness around sexual crimes against young girls after having been molested as a child herself. Stay with us. Welcome back to Real Talk on SABC3. The stage is yours. Now, if you're on a mommy WhatsApp group, tell them right now, tune into SABC3, watch Real Talk, because this is a very important discussion that we're having here. There are some truths that you're going to learn here that could protect your child for falling victim to being abused as a child, right? Keep the tweets coming as well. Make sure you're hashtagging Real Talk with Anele. Makosazana Kumalo says, very important topic for us parents. This is why I'm saying, tell all the parents to watch. This is important. It's an ongoing conversation with me and my friends. Let's raise good kids. Let's communicate. Xolisi Dlamini says, what signs should we look out for in order to see that a child is being abused? We'll discuss that in the next 20 minutes, so just stay with us. The road to healing for a child who has fallen victim at the hands of an abusive adult is riddled with challenges around speaking up about the abuse. The child also has to learn new coping tactics to better manage the destructive impacts of the abuse on his or her life. Sharon Mukuza is one such individual who had to go through such an experience after she was molested as a child. She joins us now to share her story so that we can protect our children. Sharon, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much for what you're about to share. So right into it. You were 8 years old.
Yes.
And that's when you fell prey to being abused.
Yes.
Can you walk us through it?
All right. The perpetrator was a man who was, we considered him as a family friend. They lived next door to us. And once in a while, you know, life in the townships, once in a while would go to neighbors' houses and watch TV. So this happened on one such night.
And were you the only child there? How did he zero in on you?
No, I was not the only child there. There was a bunch of us in the living room watching TV. And then he called me out as if to send me. And being my elder, I obviously gave him attention. And once I did that, he took me to the back room, and that's where he molested me.
Had he ever, because, you know, you read up on child abuse and you watch documentaries, and there's always a level of seduction, right? And because I think it's just being painted well by people, because basically you're raping a child. But there's a whole seduction thing of, oh, you're so much prettier than the other ones, you're so much smarter than the other ones, this is why I like you. Had that ever happened, or was this really the first time?
If it had, I wouldn't have thought anything out of the world of it.
You're a child, obviously.
I was a child.
Yeah.
If he ever complimented me, I thought that's what is expected of our elders. I wouldn't have thought anything bad would come out of it.
How quickly did you tell someone else about it?
I waited till 10 years. My reasons were because of fear. He had threatened me. And being a young child, I didn't know any better. And also, you know, when we were raised, during the time we were raised, sex was a taboo. You couldn't talk about sex. You couldn't take any participation in sexual activities. So a part of me also feared being victimized.
Oh, she's had sex.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Maybe you led him on, you took part, you contributed to the whole molestation. So those were some of the reasons why I kept it quiet until after 10 years.
Why speak after 10 years? What event happened that like made you think, I need to talk?
I began to have a very troubled teenage life.
Yeah.
I was rebellious. My grades started dropping in school. I didn't understand a lot of things that were happening within me and around me. So when I started getting rooted in church, there's a youth pastor at the church I used to go to who started to notice these differences, these struggles in me. And in one session with him, I ended up talking about this.
And when do you let your family know? Because obviously, like, did you blame them a little? You guys should have been there to protect me, or you felt like you'd shamed them? What was the emotion around that and your family?
I think I felt to some extent like I shamed them. And also that I let them down because I knew my family loved me. And I was in such a wonderful home setup with an uncle that I regarded as my father, you see. And I knew that to some extent I felt responsible, and I felt I let them down in not telling them because I knew they would have wanted to protect me. And maybe if I had spoken about it earlier enough, would have been able to report the matter. You see, and maybe I would not have had to go through some of the things that I went through due to the abuse.
And as an adult, outside of the church, did you go for therapy? You know, what's your healing process like?
Most of it came from church.
From the
church. And a lot of it was based on issues of forgiveness. And I see that to have freed me. Those are some of the things that really, really helped me.
Have you ever spoken to him so that he can apologize and earn the forgiveness?
No. Unfortunately, I've not seen him for a very long time. I do not even know if he's still alive.
And your mom apparently wanted to press charges when she found out.
Yes, when my mom found out a few months after I started counseling at church, we had to tell someone. We had to tell my mom. And when I told my mom, they were ready to press charges. And remember I told you about my uncle who raised me as my dad. He was involved within the law. And they wanted to press charges against him, but I didn't want to go through the whole drama of the court case and also
testifying.
this, and this being something that had happened several years ago, I just didn't want to go through the whole process.
So, I mean, I was speaking earlier directly to the parents who I believe are watching us now. As a parent, you know, what is it that you believe should be done in the scourge in South Africa now when it comes to child abuse? I mean, already we don't trust each other. No one, there's no sleepovers. You don't go to anyone's house. You sit here, you want to watch cartoons, you watch cartoons by yourself. Do you know what I'm saying? And we're on edge. We're on edge. You know, as someone who's gone through it, what advice do you give to parents?
I think opening up a platform where children are free to talk to their parents about anything without being judged and without the fear of being judged will start the conversation. Because if I'm educated, if I as a child am educated well enough about sex, then I will know if someone comes and approaches me, touches me in a certain manner, there's something that's not right, and I should be able to be quick to run to my mother or to my father to report it. But if there's no engagement between a mother and a child, or a parent and a child, then that will become difficult. And mind you, a lot of these things are being done by people we have welcomed into the home. It's not a stranger walking down the street who grabs you into a bush. Yes. It's someone you trust. Someone we trust. And so sometimes if that openness is not available within the mother and daughter relationship, if Uncle so-and-so abuses me, it might be difficult for me to tell my mother, because maybe they trust the uncle more than they trust my word, you see. So I think a lot of engagement needs to be done. A lot of education on these matters need to be done by us as the parents to our children before they even go to schools, before they even sit and watch a talk show like this. They should know it from home. Because also, I'd imagine if there's an open level of communication between parent and child, you know, like you were saying, that if somebody approaches you, they want to trust you, even the assertiveness on the child, this is not, and because by nature, an abuser is a bully. And as soon as you stand up to a bully, then even they panic. It's like, whoa, no, I was just playing. No, kid, go away. That is true. So you want to open those levels and be like, this is wrong. No one must touch you like this. No one can do this to you. And I don't care how old they are, and I don't care how much you trust them. You must literally cause havoc when it happens. And these are the conversations you wish you would have had. Yes, these are the conversations that I wish I had had. And also, I also see that as Africans, we do not have a platform to open up about a lot of issues, just even within the home setup. If we could open up, if as a parent I know who my child is dating, like in the earlier minutes of the show, they were talking about children also abusing other children. Yes. It could happen while they play. If I know who my children play with, and then it will be easier for me to spot some of these things from the way they play, the people they engage with, the sort of education they're getting from the street, you know, things like that. I really think a dialogue should exist between a parent and a child. Sharon, thank you so much for your story. And really, thank you so much for just coming and saying this is how it's supposed to be done and this is where we should head as Africans. Enough of this hiding behind culture, and let's protect our children. Yes. Sadly, Sharon's story represents one of many similar horrific tales that a lot of children are subjected to. She'll be back a little later in the show. Coming up next, we'll look into some of the options open to destitute mothers who need to escape abusive environments to get their children to safety. Stay with us.
You're with Real Talk, where today we've been tackling the issue of child abuse. It's good to have you back. Oftentimes, a mother finds herself in such an extremely abusive environment that it poses a threat to her and her child's safety, leaving her no other option but to flee. Frida Hartley Shelter has been in existence since the First World War and has taken in thousands of women and children over the years to help them get back on their feet. The center manager, Cheryl Slavane, joins us now. And I just heard that the ladies at the shelter, you recorded a video for me to say hi, hello right back. Thank you so much. And I'm glad that you guys are tuned in to support your Cheryl. So Cheryl, earlier on we spoke with one of the ladies from the Tears Foundation, Shaida, and kind of discussed the ways in which we go in helping abused children. What role does your shelter play, Frida Hartley Shelter? What role are you playing?
Basically, what Frida Hartley Shelter does is we are a shelter for destitute women and children. So destitute meaning they are homeless for a variety of reasons. So fleeing an abusive spouse, abuse at home, unemployment, a whole lot of dynamics. So then they would come to us and then we will then assess them and see how best we can assist them.
And I mean, surely you've heard all the stories and they have been totally heartbreaking and atrocious. Can you share some of them with us? Because I'm looking for, the route in which it could find them at the Frida Hartley Shelter.
One story that really stuck out because it was a very sad situation, and we're going back to child abuse, where a young lady came through to our shelter and was referred by the police because they'd found her sleeping in the park. She lived with her mom and her stepdad, of whom she has lived with for many years after her dad passed on. Unfortunately, her mom died in 2005 and she was left with this man that she trusted and loved because, it's the stepdad. Unfortunately, when her mom passed away, he then one day woke up in the middle of the night and said, listen, if you want to go to school, you need to do me favors. I can't just be giving you money for nothing. I can't give you lunch money for nothing. So we need to do each other favors because your mom is not here. And she didn't oblige, of course, at the time. And she told her aunt that this is the situation. And her aunt is the one that said, you have to do what you have to do. We don't have money, we're not employed, so how can we help you? This man has helped you for so many years. You're 17, it's not like you haven't slept with the boy before. And so she thought, okay, well, I want to finish my matric, might as well do it. And she did do it, but it wasn't enjoyable. Then it got to the point where when she needs to go to school in the morning, he'll decide, no, today you're not going to school, we will chill indoors and we will watch porn and we will do what other people do. It got to the point where she couldn't handle it anymore and she then ran away and lived with a variety of friends. And because he was such a well-known man and, the community. It was hard for people to believe her. She did tell her friend's mom that dad is doing this and the mom was like, it's impossible.
Yeah,
are you not sure that
citizens of society?
Exactly.
Of yours,
are you not sure because now you guys, I see you with boys, you're always on Facebook and what. Is it not those boys there? Stop lying. This person will never do that. Stop spreading those rumors. You'll ruin his reputation. He might lose his job and he might not be able to take care of you. And she then decided, okay, I can't stay. So even her friend's mom chased her away and said, you're going to influence my daughter badly because now you're talking about this person badly. So unfortunately, we can't accommodate you.
When does she come to you guys?
She then decided to live in the street. So the police found her one night and they asked her, okay, this is the second time we see you here. What are you doing here? She explained her situation. They then called us up. We had a bed available. We called her. We assessed her, and that's when she narrated the story. Her plan was not to stay at the shelter. Her plan was for us to help her make her family understand that this is true. So we then called up the family, of course, taking her to medical doctors.
So you take it that far as well. It's not just like you're in a shelter, you're here until you can take care of yourself. You want to fix the situation that caused her to be there. Okay.
We did call the aunt. We did ask to have a meeting. They came through, and the first thing they said is, I hope you're not opening a case because Uzbanbani didn't do this. And I said, well, we did take her to doctors and this is what they found out. And unfortunately, because of that, she's also contracted a deadly disease at 18. And the family still insisted that, you know what, this person has helped us so much. Can we forgive him? The family is the one, the aunt is the one that even cried. That's even the worst thing. Like, please, mxolele, you know, we are Africans, the spirit of forgiveness. He's done so much for you. You know, when your mother died and before your mother died, your dad, dad left you, your dad never loved you, and this man took you on board, and please forgive him. You know, what will the community say? What will society say? Nobody's ever going to believe you.
Earlier you said when the police called, you guys like, okay, we have a bed available, you know, you can bring her through. And then you said you assess her and then you let her in. Because it would be nice to let everyone in.
Oh,
but you can't.
No, we can't,
and we don't have those resources, you know. We could if money came through from everyone.
Exactly.
But, you know, we don't have those resources. You know, what is your assessment plan? How do you know that this person has to be here?
It's so much better if it's a referral. You know, of course we do have walk-ins that will just knock and, oh, you know, I was walking around, my boyfriend chased me, or my mom kicked me out of the house. And sometimes it's just rebellious, you know, young kids. You know, your mom says clean your room and you don't want to, and she beats you up or something, and then you start crying wolf, and then you come to a shelter and you look for a place, and then 2 days later you disappear.
That there is a certain
exactly.
level of that.
So, you know, if it's a referral by the police, you know, they've done the investigation. So the police had then called the aunt at the time, and the aunt was like, well, we can't take on board because she's lying that this person raped her. And the police said, okay, well, until we find out the truth, are you able to sit down with her? So we do. We sit down with the person and ask her, you know, certain questions. You know, we do a variety of assessment depending on what the person has gone through. And also sending her to the doctor and getting those tests and the doctor assessing her.
That's money. Who pays for that?
We do.
How do you guys get your money?
By the grace of God, we have donors. We're not saying we have money. We are always looking for funding to try and assist these young women, because it just doesn't stop. You know, we differentiate ourselves from other shelters because we don't just offer sleep. So you don't walk in and then, oh, here's a bed, wake up, do whatever you like. No, we don't. You know, we do a whole lot of skills development for the women that come through.
So you want them, when they come through and they're destitute and, you know, because financial, you know, abuse being the root of the other evils that happen, is that then you give them skills so that when they do go out...
It's important to empower them, because most of them come there because they don't have those resources, they don't have those skills. And as much as we would like to find everybody a job, but we don't want them to be so comfortable that, oh, here's a job, and then tomorrow you lose the job, then you're back at the shelter again. So it's important to give them the skills to be able to make money on their own. So they go through a variety of assessments. They also go through a variety of training where they can have their own little small businesses, you know, with the help of the NYDA, who offers them training courses and also helps them with grants, and other small entities that will also assist us. You know, at the end of the day, we want them to come out of the shelter, you know, having been empowered and being able to take care of themselves and their children. So if they do find themselves in a situation where they are abused and they are unhappy, they can just pack their bags and hit the road.
And I'd assume there's security at the shelter, or it's quite, I don't know, like...
It's so funny. I mean, yeah, there's a gate.
Because you know there's crazy men who come find you, right?
And women.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Not just men, and women. Yeah. I mean, I've been threatened a lot. But we do have security. However, it's so funny because we're in the hub of Yuvo and the community is so protective of us. As soon as I walk out of there, if anything, like, you know, everybody knows my name. So it's like, oh, you know, they'll protect you. They want to wash your car. They know what we do. They know me. It's even the police. Like if somebody else calls the police, they won't come as quick as they would if we call them. So if something happens next door, they're like, oh, please call the police, because if you guys call them, they are here just now. So the community protects us a lot, which is very, you know, comforting, knowing that we have the support of the community of Yuval.
Okay, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you
so much for the good work that you do.
Thank you
so much. I did give a side eye to the corporates out there who must give you guys money.
We need it.
The Frida Hartley
Shelter for
Frida Hartley Shelter. Ladies who are watching from the Frida Hartley Shelter.
Ayanda, it's Lindo Gushe, and it's Ray Sunshine. You have to say
Ayanda, Lindo Gushe, and Ray Sunshine. Hey now.
Screaming.
Hey now. After the break, we conclude our conversation on this issue of child abuse. Oh, man. Oh, my God. This has been a real talk today where tough conversations have been had on the topic of child abuse. To bring our discussion to an end, I welcome back Director of the Teddy Bear Foundation, Shahida Omar, the Center Manager at Frida Hartley Shelter, Cheryl Slavane, as well as child abuse survivor and now motivational speaker, Sharon Mukuza. Sharon, you go around, and you give the talks about your own experience. Do you find that kids open up to you and tell you what's happening with them once you share your story?
Yes, they do. A lot of people want to hear such stories of survival from someone who has been through what they're going through. Yes. They relate easier and better with someone like that. So I've seen that a lot of opening up takes place, yes.
Takes place. Shahida, I mean, in the instance where it is decided that we are going to press charges and we're going to court and we're going to put this perpetrator behind bars, what's the process for a child? Does the child go to court? Do they give their testimony to a magistrate or a judge by themselves? Because as a parent, another reason why you cower is because you don't want to put your child through any more abuse, because it's a different kind of abuse, but it's still abuse.
Indeed, I think that the scary part, but the reality is that children are further subjected to victimization where the systems are failing children. Because if we look at the delay from the time a case is reported till it's finalized in court, could be anything between 2 and 6 years. So if we're looking at processes, firstly, the child has to make a disclosure, statement has to be made in the presence of an investigating officer at the police station, and then that case, a CARES number is then allocated to the child. It will then go to the NPA, to the prosecutor, who will then look at the merits of the case to see, will this case actually, be convicted? Is there a strong probability or possibility of conviction? Only then will they put the case on the roll. So, these are challenges. But again, as I mentioned to you, the great deterrent is that children have to wait for a long period. They go back and forth to court. Now, at the Teddy Bear Foundation, we have a court preparation program. It's an innovative program because we empower children to tell their story in court. We don't teach them what to say. Okay. We enable them to say it as it is or as it happened and to speak the truth. We've also introduced an alternative medium of approach where we are using canine assisted therapy, using dogs to come into the court room where we prepare children for court preparation.
What does that do? Does it make the child feel safer that the dog is their friend?
Thank you for asking that question, because there's a generalized perception where dogs are associated with police. There's this negative connotation. And if we look at the indigenous population groups, people are usually, there's a general fear of dogs. Yes. So we stretch children out of their comfort zones because they realize that not all dogs bite once they start engaging.
Yes.
So not all adults, not all white people, not all black people hurt children.
Not all adults, because if I'm a child and I was hurt by an adult, I can't trust any of you.
Indeed.
Cheryl, do you have a process where the ladies are at your shelter, the children are at your shelter, and they're currently going to court, and you guys in a way have to facilitate that? There has to be therapy, there has to be legal, there has to be all of that.
Yes, we do. But like my colleague has said, the process takes so long that, in between the process, somebody decides, okay, I'm no longer going to go there. And because they can only stay a certain time at the shelter, and once they leave the shelter, even though we will follow up and we will go to court with them, I've been to court so many times, I've been to police station so many times, somehow in between somebody will not show up at court because it's dragged on for so long and there's nothing to gain. And we've had instances where, some police will be like, Mara, why am I dropping a case, Mara? And it happens.
Wow, guys, our police are special. No, our police are special. They are special.
And somebody's like, okay, well, they're like, yeah, it's what like 5, 10. Oh, nesikhathi probably case when like things like that. And then somebody thinks, vele, like what's going to happen? Because you're seeing the perpetrator walking in the streets anyway. So why are you still going on? Why are you still going up and down to the courts? And this person can continue to intimidate you. So it doesn't make sense for some people. And because it takes that long, halfway through, somebody decides, why not?
Sharon, if somebody that has reached out to you through your motivational talks is wanting to drop a case, how do you convince them to carry on with it when you know that you didn't even want to start it? Do you convince them to carry on with it? What's the conversation there?
I would definitely encourage them to carry on. Try and get them the right sort of assistance from different organizations. Reason being, the more we speak out, the more we fight on, the more we make noise in the courthouses, the more we keep doing this, no matter how long it takes, but the more we do it, finally change will come. And yes, I may sound like a coward to a lot of people that are listening today because I didn't want to go through the process. And here she is talking about, let's keep doing it. I have learned from my mistakes. Unfortunately, I will never know if that man abused somebody else. And if I had reported the case, if I had said something, we would have locked him away. And if there's any other victims, they would have been protected just by my act. So I think having a conscience at the back of your head that a lot of other people are relying on this act of me reporting, of me pursuing this case, will help us.
Do you want to add on anything before
I think
Shada?
Cheryl is saying something so important, that by speaking out, you're not only helping yourself, but you are reaching out to so many other vulnerable children, because patterns prevail, and this will continue to perpetuate itself, and therefore it's bringing an end to some kind of abuse.
Cheryl?
I think my biggest appeal, especially to African parents, sex has to stop being a taboo. You know, a lot of times we fall victims of this because we are so scared to talk about sex all the time, and however, they will let you watch sexual content on TV and they tell you to close their eyes, and then you'll start peeping, and then that's when kids get excited and they want to do these things and don't know the consequences of what they are doing. And as my colleague said, 40% of the kids that are abusers are children, and we see that at our shelter. We don't accept boys that are over the age of 6 years. So if you come in and your son is 6 years, we can let you stay, but we can't let your son stay, because we've had instances where young boys want to experiment with other young children. So just such things where we don't talk about sex, you know. Let's make it fashionable, respectable.
And loose and free and
exactly,
flowy.
you know,
Guys, thank you so much. Thank you to all my guests for helping us unpack this matter. Shaida Oma, Micah Hybrechts, who was in earlier, Sharon Mukuza, as well as Cheryl Sawane. All the ladies do every bit, every day to help create a safer environment for South Africa's children, and we salute their efforts. Enjoy the rest of your evening. I know you have a lot to think about. We'll see each other tomorrow. Bye.
Thank you.